And welcome back to the 12th episode of Around the Bases with Bubba and Mo. I am Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at BDintric. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Around Bases Pod. And as usual, I am joined by my co-host, Boston Mo. Find him on Twitter at Boston_Mo. Mo, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well. 12 episodes. Wow, it's crazy that we've done 12, almost 3 months of this. The GOAT episode, Tom Brady. So it's good stuff. What's up, Bubba?
Oh, geez, we got to go with the GOAT episode. Well, hey, we'll skip baseball for a second. What's your thoughts on him being on the Madden cover?
I don't know if you guys, people around the country and stuff, probably didn't see it, but if you follow him on Facebook, he does a bunch of like corny shit with his TB12 institute that he has at like Foxborough and Patriot Place. And so he did like a video of him in like a bubble saying, "I don't believe in curses, this and that." Hey, if anyone's not going to get hurt, it's Tom Brady. But what do I know? It could be 2008, and we could have Bernard Pollard roll up on his knee again. So I'm not really worried about it. But hey, the Madden curse is the Madden curse. It doesn't lie.
It does not lie. It does not lie. But yeah, pretty entertaining stuff. But yeah, 12 episodes flying by. The beautiful thing about sports and baseball is it just gives us what we have to talk about. We don't have to really think too much, just kind of how we want to approach it, I guess we should say. And we'll kick it off straight into our MLB news as we do. Over the weekend, Derek Jeter, El Capitan, finally had his number retired by the Yankees, the 22nd player or manager to have his number retired. They put him in Monument Park, all the goodies. One of the unique features in baseball these days, he played his entire career with one team. As a Red Sox fan and as a baseball fan, what does the retirement of Jeter, the whole Jeter thing mean to you, or what did you take away from this weekend?
Well, the retirement of Jeter's number means I'm getting fucking old, number one, because, he came up in, 94, 95, so I'm almost like 8, 9 years old. And the funny thing is I hated most of the Yankees. I loved Jeter. There was something about him where it was like, I feel like he wasn't the most talented player of all time, but he got the most out of his ability. And the funny thing is he came up in the perfect time when we talk about, everyone knows about his, he bringing chicks back to his room and they get the gift baskets. Just imagine if it's now. And I know everyone says that Brett Favre, if we knew about him during social media time, but he literally came up and then ended it perfect time in terms of that sort of social media climate. So not that he ever would have got caught doing anything scandalous, but you never know with that shit. It's an amazing thing, and what a humble speech by him saying he wouldn't switch places with anyone ever, which he's probably right. I mean, I think if anyone would want to switch if they were a baseball player, they'd probably switch with Jeter. Living in New York, Yankee dynasty, however many rings they won, shortstop of the most, the most famous franchise maybe in the world. We talk about I'm a big soccer guy, and they talk about Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, but New York Yankees is probably the most popular franchises, at least top 5 in the world. So it was a great thing. They had all the old Yankees players up there, watch the ceremony. It's funny to see Yankee ceremonies compared. And I know I always compare it to Red Sox, but that's where I live. It's my fan. It's my team. So they do things differently. The Red Sox bring in other like the other teams from each town, and obviously tough for New York to do that because the Knicks suck. And the Giants have won. I give them that. The Jets suck. So it's tough for them to do that, and it's easier for Boston. But the different feel, the Yankee sort of ceremony seems a little older, but if that makes any sense to anyone. But, hey, I loved him as a player. Obviously I had to hate him because in terms of when we played them. But as a player and a person, I got no complaints about the guy.
Yeah, it's pretty funny the way you say that, like we're getting old, because I collected baseball cards as a kid. Every now and then I still grab a pack just for fun. And I remember getting his rookie card. Like, that was a thing. So when you're old enough to have players' rookie cards now, that kind of goes like, wow, things are kind of changing here. But yeah, it'd be hard to imagine trading somewhere else because, like you said, the Yankees are the Yankees. You can know pretty much nothing about baseball, but you will know the Yankees. And during his heyday, you knew who Derek Jeter was. There was like no sugarcoating that. There was no hiding that. It was pretty amazing. I'm curious to see how it's all going to play out with him potentially going to purchase the Marlins and become a bigger piece there, kind of how Jordan did his thing in the NBA now. But it was good to see the old school nature of the ceremony. That's just Yankees at their finest. They try to keep it as old school, it seems. But, yeah, pretty remarkable to think that he played 20 years with one team. I'm going to ask you one more question, and we didn't really prepare for it. But if you had to just think about it, like for you guys, I could say maybe Pedroia, but in general, like who's the closest thing we have to Derek Jeter right now? Like I'm not talking, we know Mike Trout's like the greatest player alive, but I'm talking like just for their team, for their city, for the game, Derek Jeter. Like who is that right now in baseball to you?
Yeah, I mean, Trout's the easy one, but no one even reports on him. He's like having another unbelievable season. We didn't think he could get better than he already was. I would say, your neck of the woods would be Posey, but again, it's like West Coast bias, same with kind of Kershaw. That's a really, really tough question. I guess I'd have to go Bryce Harper right now. I mean, he's in the nation's capital. He's going to get $40 million a year, probably from the Yankees. He's a Yankee fan as a kid, even though he's from Vegas. So I guess I'd have to go with Bryce Harper.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Let's go on to another set of news. We had a segment for a while of David Price news all revolving around the unique elbow, but we finally have David Price good news. He threw a simulated game of 75 pitches. He's set to rehab on Friday in Pawtucket, potentially up to 90 pitches. I'll let you take it from there, but this team, I was reading, they haven't lost more than 2 games in a row this year. They haven't won more than 2. They've been hovering around 500. I'm not worried about them, but I know your thoughts on Price. What's your thoughts on this part of Price?
He's been quiet the last month. Like you said, we haven't had a unique elbow segment in a little bit because I was pissed and I thought he should get Tommy John surgery. And I'm going to stick by that until he's pitching in the playoffs this year when we make it. Yeah, his rehab start got pushed off to Friday. Can't believe they're making him go to Buffalo, but I mean, I'm sure he'll get a private jet there. It won't be an issue. His return, if he can come back to somewhat David Price form, what I mean by that is just pitch like last year where he literally wasn't great, but he wasn't $30 million David Price, but he was a number 2, number 3 guy, especially with the Wright injury. Not that Stephen Wright is amazing, but Stephen Wright eats up innings and, he'll get you killed maybe in 1 or 2 games, but then he'll throw a 7-inning 2-run game out of nowhere. So we don't want to see Kyle Kendrick anymore. So David Price is huge to have back, especially where the Red Sox bats have been cold. And like you said, they're 20-18. A big game tonight against the Cardinals. Their bats are starting to heat up. It's getting warm. For those of you listening in Boston, it's 90 degrees today, so that's great. The ball will carry more. It's finally good news with David Price and some sort of injury front with the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, I'm just terrified that what we've been talking about for so long might finally happen, and he's going to come off the DL, and boom, first game, problem. Okay, let's have Tommy John surgery. I know you're thinking it. You can see it coming.
Like I said, I'm not. We're not out of the woods until he pitches in the playoffs and opts out after next year. We're not in the woods until after the 2018 season. This will be an ongoing process until episode 112. Okay, so it's going to be there.
Outstanding. Okay, well, we're moving on to Super 2 talk. We've talked prospects in the past. We both really like prospects part of baseball, and we're going to try to intertwine it more in the podcast, especially with all these guys getting called up. Recently, we had Cody Bellinger get called up. Just a couple of days ago, you had Ian Happ with the Cubs, and he's off to a hot start. You had Zimmer for the Indians called up. He went yard today. All these guys are going to get called up. You keep hearing names mentioned. Before we get into a couple guys, we're going to weekly talk about a few guys that are on the verge or just got called up. I want to go over real quick on what Super 2 stands for because, I wasn't even completely clear on it. I had a rough idea. A lot of people don't even know what it means, and you hear the term Super 2 status used a lot because the teams will say, hey, we're going to keep a player down until this date, and then we'll bring them up so they don't become Super 2. Okay, here's what it is. To start your salary arbitration as a player, you have to have 3 years of MLB service time. Now, what makes you Super 2 is if you have those 3 years, or if you rank in the top 22% of service time among players between 2 and 3 years of service, you graduate to Super 2. So you don't have to have 3 full years is what I'm saying. If you're in that top 22%, they can count you as Super 2. That's why these teams wait. It varies per year. On this page I was reading, like in 2014, you had to have 2.133 seasons of game time. It varies throughout year to year based on percentages, obviously. But that's why roughly you'll see teams shoot for like 65 days into the season, and then you'll get them. That's why we've been talking, middle of May to middle of June, based on when they acquired a player, you'll start to see activity. Now, teams that don't care and they want to win now, they roll the dice and they go. But when you bring them up, that's when you start the clock. So like an Ian Happ, for instance, they brought him up. If they send him back down, well, his clock has already started. They've lost all options there. Now, becoming Super 2 earlier than later does not affect when they will become a free agent. They're still with that team for their estimated, I think it's 5 or 6 years once they're drafted. What it does do is it starts arbitration sooner. So instead of making the bare minimum of say $500,000 a year and for your first 3 years or whatever, now your arbitration starts sooner. Where say you have a great year and you get arbitration for $3 million, well, now you're making $2.5 million more than you would. This is why teams wait. You look at Bryce Harper, who just got over $20 million in arbitration. So not saying, you'd ever leave him down. That'd just be foolish. But he basically had, I think, 6 years of arbitration because he came up right away. Thus the Super 2, and you try to wait as long as possible. I know this is very long-winded, but I'm trying to just give you the best example of what it is. And that is why teams do it. Strictly financial, has nothing to do about losing a player sooner than later. And you're going to hear the term a ton. And all of a sudden, when we're 65, 70 days into the season, you're going to see a flood of players, I have a feeling, come in. And we're going to start getting to some of them. And Mo, why don't you start us off with one in your backyard?
Yeah, it's a different one here. Rafael Devers, he's the top prospect in the Red Sox organization because we don't have any prospects left. But he was one of the top ones anyway. 20 years old. Baseball America just came out with their revised top 100 list, and he's 14th overall there. He's really, really heating up. So the last couple years, he's hit 11 homers. Last year he stole 18 bases at high A, batted 282. Doesn't strike out a ton, it's about 17%. This year, in only 124 plate appearances, he's got 7 homers, 22 RBIs. He's walking more, striking out a little bit more, but his ISO's up to 270. His average is up to 333. So So he's really having a tremendous year. It's really caught on the last 2 or 3 weeks. And the reason why we wanted to bring him into this, the Red Sox want to wait. They don't need to rush players because they like to get them at bats not only in Double A and Triple A. A little bit different with Benintendi. They brought him up, but they like to try to get them at bats at every level if possible. I think that's changed a little bit with Dombrowski, and it also changes when Sandoval's hurt and you trade Travis Shaw to the Brewers, and then Moncada, who came up as a second baseman, played third base the end of last year. You trade him for Sale. Now we're not teetering, 20 and 18, but if he continues to be hot here, he's very young. Maybe you bring him up, a little bit of spark with the veterans and a couple of the young guys here. You put him at third base because, hey, it's Josh Rutledge and DeArnold or whatever his name is, Chase DeArnold. You bring him up, try to get him a little seasoning, see how he does. Hopefully you don't ruin him, and see if you can spark the lineup a little bit getting into the warm weather of the summer.
Yeah, I like it. He's crushing the minors, so definitely worth a look. The first one I'm going to kick us off with is Ahmed Rosario. You've heard his name mentioned a lot with the New York Mets. He's 21 years old, super young, third baseman. First full year in AAA, and he is absolutely raking. The last week or so, he's on fire, like more than normal. But he has 19 multi-hit games on the season, batting .364 in AAA, with 3 homers, 21 runs scored, 26 RBIs, and 8 stolen bases. Striking out only 13.2% of the time, which is outstanding for a young ball player. He's brought that down from 21.5% last year in AA. I was reading up that the coaches are loving him because he's really, really taking an effort to become a better ball player. Even when, like they're saying, when relievers get brought into a game in AAA, he runs straight to the coaches and starts looking for scouting reports. And not many ball players do that kind of thing. So he's definitely on his way up. And the Mets are somehow still in this mess. We talk about the disaster that is the Mets over and over again. And with all the injuries and just everything that's gone wrong in New York, they're still somewhat in this race, at least for a wild card before the Nats run away with it. But Rosario is an interesting piece for the fact that they've had shortstop issues now with Asdrubal Cabrera going out with his thumb injury we'll talk about later, but his injury might linger for gosh knows how long. You have Jose Reyes playing third base because David Wright's out forever. Rosario is essentially an upgrade over Jose Reyes, which doesn't say much. But if there's a shortstop issue to top it off, Rosario can play shortstop as well. It definitely opens up options for the Mets with a nice young prospect. They have a couple nice prospects down there. We can talk about the other ones later. But Rosario might be coming up sooner than later. They didn't want to rush him, but they're starting to the name's starting to pop up a lot more in conversation.
Yeah, I like Rosario a lot. I think they've lost 6 straight, so I'm not sure they're going to rush him, especially with their Cabrera DL stint coming up. I think they're going to take their time with him. I think they know that they can't really win this year, so there'd be no point in rushing him unless they really want to try to make a run here at the wild card. The next guy is Franklin Barreto. He's 21 years old, again, 25th overall in the latest top 100 for Baseball America. He's the key to the Josh Donaldson trade. I was really critical of Billy Beane when he did it because I thought the Red Sox had enough to get him and other teams would give more for Donaldson. But clearly, I'm not a GM, Billy Beane is. He knew about Franklin Barreto, who's real raw, and this is their guy. Currently projected at shortstop, but people are worried about his athleticism there. To stick, a lot of guys want to see him at center field. They think he has the speed to really thrive in center. He's, last year, again, 10 homers, 30 stolen bases, 281 with a 340 OBP. Nothing to sneeze at there. This year, he's striking out a little bit more. Last year was about 18%. It's 27% this year in 163 plate appearances. He's already got 5 dingers, 313 average. So he's still really, really young. I think probably projects to a 15 ish 20 homer guy if he can get there. Maybe a 20-20 guy if he really develops that raw power, and probably around a 280 to 290 hitter. So the A's need some bats. Billy Beane's really filled that with a lot of veteran kind of platoon guys, Plouffe, Matt Joyce, Rajai Davis. So they really need some young bats to get up there along with their young pitching.
Yeah, when Simeon went down on the 60-day DL, his name was mentioned, and they said, no, we're going to wait. We're going to wait. But like I said before, he's coming up, and when he does come up, he's likely to stick. The kid is very, very talented. My last guy, Lewis Brinson, outfielder for the Milwaukee Brewers, absolute stud. Came over in the Texas Rangers trade for Jonathan Lucroy. He kind of looks, in his minor league career so far to be like a 20-20 type guy, maybe a little more speed than power. Biggest thing for him is he was never a big walk guy. He's almost up to 11% walk rate this year in AAA. First full season in AAA. He spent a little time play with the Brewers. He hit 382, but only walked 2.2% of the time. So up to 11% is huge. Had an amazing spring with them. They don't want to rush him. They had Domingo Santana and Keon Broxton in the outfield with Ryan Braun. So they're trying to take their time, but Domingo Santana has just been a disaster this year. Broxton's finally turning it on. Ryan Braun is injured, and they definitely want to try to trade him. So it's coming sooner than later with Brinson. It's just a matter of, do they give up on Santana or they get rid of Braun? Which one comes first is basically what it comes down to. Brinson will be up, and when he gets up, he's going to be a very good defender in the outfield. He just turned 23 like a little over a week ago. Very young still, in that ballpark to be productive. I think it's going to take him some time to adjust. If you look at his minor league stats, every time he changed levels, it took him a while to get used to things. So don't go running out and, thinking he's going to be the God's gift to outfielders on your fantasy team. But he is uber talented. So obviously most of these guys we're going to talk about are going to be very talented. But Lewis Brinson of the Milwaukee Brewers, definitely a part of the great rebuild that they are starting to put together in Milwaukee. And if they can get some pitching, hopefully in a Braun deal, their rebuild's looking good because they've gotten some very nice pieces in that lineup.
Yeah, I like Brinson a lot. I mean, they're really rebuilding with him. Josh Hader, the nice young starter, and then Corey Ray, their draft pick last year, is another outfielder. So they got a promising future there in Milwaukee. I know we both liked them before the season, what they were doing. The next topic, this is my guy here. This is my favorite manager of all time for Red Sox, maybe ever. Terry Francona. Couple pranks. He did it last year. He did it again this year with a new thing on the Indians video board for his old player and bench coach Kevin Cash. Bubba, have you seen these? Do you need me to go over what they said? I mean, it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I saw the Kevin Cash when I saw a tweet about it on the Jumbotron pregame to the first game between the Indians and the Rays, where he basically had a picture of Cash and his career batting stats, which obviously aren't great. And I thought that was just priceless. Like welcome to Cleveland, Kevin. Here's your numbers. Pretty darn good stuff, but the other stuff I can't really remember. But I've heard nothing but great things about Tito, from stories from Pedroia and such, that he is just the ultimate manager of managers. Great guy. And I know you agree with it, and we might have even talked about it before, that the Red Sox really screwed that one up.
Well, unfortunately, at that time with the whole chicken and beer thing, it was time for him to go. None of us wanted him to go, but it was time. It had been 8+ years. Or 8 years, and he really, I don't know if losing the clubhouse was the thing, but I think maybe too comfortable. A lot of stories about him where basically if you go in to talk to him, he's like this on the toilet, like shitting, and he's talking to you, and he's just naked, like just the whole thing, talking to you, no problem. Like people would just go in there and he'd be naked, just shitting on the toilet. So he's hilarious. Yeah. We'll tweet the pictures on our Around Bases pod Twitter account. But basically, the one last year was Kevin Cash, tribute to legacy, and then it showed his stats. It was like a 183 average, like 248 OBP, and then he showed the career stats this year, and he's like, how bad is Kevin Cash at the plate? And then he basically said him on all non-active pitchers with 650 plate appearances, 5th worst OPS plus of all time. So, he loves that guy. He shits on him all the time, apparently. And the fact that Kevin Cash had 8 years tells you what, as long as you can call a good game as a catcher, you're still gonna make some kind of money and make a team, which is crazy to think about. But we'll tweet those out. Now on to our favorite segments again. Luckily, Bubba, we don't have a ton this week for DL news. And I'll go through the AL ones quickly. There's only about 5 of them. A couple quick ones. Steve Pearce, he started getting hot a little bit. I think he had about 4 homers in about 10 days. He went to the DL with strained right calf. But some good news to watch out for. Josh Donaldson could return this weekend. And that's huge for the Blue Jays because they are coming back to life a little bit. Sure, we'll talk about him in the next couple weeks. Brandon Guyer is to the DL, left wrist injury, out 4 to 6 weeks. And that opened the roster spot because Tyler Naquin is hurt down on in AAA. It opens a roster spot for top prospect Bradley Zimmer. Awful night last night, 0 for 3 with 3 Ks. Today, a home run and a double. So that's great news for the Indians if he can get going because they do need some young guys coming up. Tough news with the Mariners. Robinson Cano DL with a quad injury. I didn't know this, and I'm not sure if you did, but first time to the DL in a decade. So that's pretty impressive. Even he started off his Seattle career, kind of rough, but that's pretty impressive to not be on the DL for a decade. I mean, that not many guys can do that. A couple more. Carlos Gomez out 4 to 6 weeks of the hamstring strain. And knowing Carlos Gomez, that could be a lot longer than 4 to 6 weeks for Texas, and they've come alive a little bit too. Delino DeShields will probably take that spot in center every day. So, watch out for Carlos Gomez. He got into it with Houston again a couple weeks ago. We talked about that brawl. So he doesn't like the fans, and he doesn't like many of those Astros guys, it sounds like, from his time there. So, kind of tough loss for them because they don't have a ton of depth, especially with Profar just not being what he was supposed to be. And then last one, Yuniel Escobar out 2 to 4 weeks with the hamstring for the Angels. He doesn't give much in terms of fantasy, but he has been at the top of that lineup. He does get on base a little bit. So not the biggest loss for them, but hey, Angels got no depth there. It's just Trout and maybe Calhoun, Pujols, and everyone else. So that's the DL news of the AL. Bubba, what do you got in the NL?
Yep, for the NL, we'll kick it off with Ryan Braun. We mentioned him a couple weeks ago. He was out with a trapeze injury, came back. Then he aggravated his calf. He has a grade 1 calf strain. They're saying it's not serious because grade 1 obviously means it's the least to worry about. They're hoping he'll be back when his 10 days is up. They're not going to rush him back, though, because they want him 100% healthy when he comes back because they want to trade him. So he'll be back soon. Story to the disabled list with a left shoulder strain. They said it got so sore for the Rockies that he could barely swing a bat. He basically just took time off, let it heal, took some batting practice a day or two ago. They're hoping he can come back rather quickly, even for the Reds series coming up, if all goes well there. He's just been struggling mightily. A week or two off might not be the worst thing for Trevor Story. We mentioned it as breaking news during last pod. Andrew Toles to the DL with a torn ACL. Like you said with Escobar, not the biggest fantasy impact, but he was leading off for the Dodgers, and it opened the door for Cody Bellinger to definitely stay up once Adrian Gonzalez comes back with his injury. For the Diamondbacks, A.J. Pollock to the DL with a groin injury. That's pretty devastating for a team that's been on fire. He was their leadoff hitter. They're saying it's just a grade 1 strain. Everything looked great. He's feeling better already. Hoping, just normal rest. He'll be back right when he comes off. But he missed a lot of time last year for groin injury. And hoping it's not one of those lingering things with Pollock, who has been off to a pretty good start to this season. Yeah, Hunter Pence in my backyard to the DL yet again. He's almost getting as bad as Troy Tulowitzki with the disabled list. Hamstring injury yet again. Everything reports it as minor. But the way he just plays so recklessly, it's just one of those things you could see him re-aggravating over and over again. But he should be back sometime towards the end of next week. And then it mentioned earlier, Asdrubal Cabrera finally to the DL with his thumb injury. It's a injury to like the ligament around his thumb joint. The swelling has gone down. It's just a matter of keeping the swelling down, letting it heal. So there's no official timetable. They're hoping it's just, the 10 days. Might be a little longer. But it's one of those typical where he sat for like 4 days. Then they said, okay, we'll bring you back. And then he hurts it even worse and hurts it even worse. Typical Mets garbage. They could have had this fixed a long time ago. Thus why it's a name to remember, because this could be one of those injuries that just gets worse and worse every time he comes back if it's not completely healthy first time. And then real quickly, I saw it record. I don't have all the information, but Gregory Polanco of the Pirates to the DL with a hamstring injury seems to be the theme of this week's Disabled List, hamstrings. But he's on the DL. He's been off to a slow start as well. So keep an eye on that in Pittsburgh. Let's take a look at the Bullpens, our weekly segment of what in the world is happening in baseball. And we'll kick it off with Aroldis Chapman of the New York Yankees heading to the Disabled List with left shoulder rotator cuff inflammation for a little more than a month. His velocity has been down almost a mile to 2 miles an hour this year. The opponent's batting average is almost up to 240 when he's been below 200 his whole career. Saves of late, just not as dominant as once expected. Hoping rest gets the job done. What do you think on this one, Mo?
Yeah, quick note on the NLDL. It just came out 20, 30 minutes ago, but Trevor Cahill to the DL with right shoulder strain for the Padres. So that's a tough one for the Padres because he's been really pitching well, but going from the bullpen to rotation, sort of like a Drew Pomeranz thing for them. That's kind of a tough one, especially where they're probably looking to trade him. And again, we'll talk about him, later on in the podcast. But I guess the big question on this is, did Joe Madden kill Aroldis Chapman's shoulder? I think that's the big question. They won a World Series, but damn, did he mismanage him last year during the playoffs? It was very, very weird what he did with him. I don't know if Chapman has any love lost for Joe Madden. He got a ring, one of the most important rings, maybe of all time for baseball, especially nowadays. But Dellin Betances is going to become a closer. We know about his stuff, but last year when they traded Chapman and traded Mill, he was the closer and he wasn't very good. It's that whole mentality thing where he can't really turn it on when it comes to getting out of his comfort zone. And I know a lot of people, Joaquin Benoit kind of said the same thing about Pete Mackinnon, and then they gave Mackinnon, a 2-year deal. So, which is that kind of fragile state that I hate, but that's baseball players. It's a very weird thing. I think the guy to really watch out for, I think Clifford will get first crack at the setup guy because he's the vet. I think the guy to watch out for here is Jonathan Holder. He's been very good this year. Not amazing stuff in terms of velocity. He throws about 92 to 94. But I think the pitch that he's really, really, improved and is his number one pitch is his cutter. It's his best pitch. He throws it the most. If you go to Brooks Baseball and look at it, he gets the most, swings and misses from that pitch. He throws it the most. It sits in around 89, 90. So he in the minors, he was striking out, around 11 to 14 guys per 9. He's around 9 in the majors this year with a 2.16 ERA and a 1.53 FIP. So I think that's the guy to watch, especially in your league if you're in a fantasy league with holds or even I'm in my 20-team league is, saves plus holds. So I think that's the guy to watch out for to maybe take over that setup role if he keep improving. To the Mets. We'll keep going to the Mets. Jerry's Familia to the deal with a blood clot in his right arm. This is a weird one. You don't see this often. This is just more good news for Mets, Bubba. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, it's a freaky one. He missed all that time with his BS suspension, and then he came back, looked pretty good. Then he kind of got hit around, and they did a little digging, and he had an arm problem. It's a good thing they found it because that kind of blood clot could lead to potentially losing your arm or worse, the closer it gets to your brain. So it's a very odd injury. It's going to take him a while to recover. I didn't see the exact timetable there, but it's usually a few months at least. So enter Addison Reed, who started the year as the closer, picked up 4 saves in a little bit of time there. He's been decent, ERA at 3.86, but xFIP at 2.38. So there's potential there. He's got a K per 9 over of 11.09, which is outstanding. Still has not walked a batter all season. So all in all, it's not the worst guy to go to, but it's just more problems for the Mets. They've already been depleted. You look at, they have Robles and Montero and other options, but nothing's really that great there. If they find out Familia's going to be out for a while, they might need to make a move if they're still in it. Otherwise, find someone in the pen, or the minors, I guess. But Reed will be usable. He'll be very usable. I have no problem with him there. Just odd injury there compared to all the injuries we've been seeing this year. That one's definitely not one you'd expect. Moving to Milwaukee, Neftali Feliz. The Neftali Feliz experiment has come to an end as he has been brutal for the Brew Crew. And I believe it's a name we've mentioned before, Corey Knebel. I probably butchered that. He's a flamethrower. He's young. He's great stuff. He is now the closer until otherwise noted. What are you thinking on that one, Mo?
That's unfortunate for the the Feliz experiment. They really took a chance there. I mean, it's obviously a good chance. They did the same thing with Thames, and that's worked out so far. I mean, they only paying him $5 million, which is nothing in baseball nowadays. And it's really sad to see because, he's fastball back up to, 97 miles an hour. Unfortunately, he's not missing as many bats. And again, Brooks Baseball, phenomenal website to go to for some pitch FX if you're really into that stuff. He's just not missing any bats. Fastball, he's gone from, missing 15.5% to 10%. But the real one is his secondary pitches. He throws a slider. That's his really only other pitch. Last year, his slider was phenomenal. He's missing 20% of bats, and it's down to 9.5%. So his slider's getting crushed. Fastball isn't good enough to make up for it. Whereas Knebel, he's up to 96.5 for velocity. And he's missing 18% of his bats compared to 10% last year. So he's really improved. He's had issues in the past with walks. And again, this year he's still 4 per 9. And he's been hit hard, but this year he hasn't allowed a homer. His BABIP isn't terrible. His left on base is 90%, but it could drop a little bit. But 0.9 ERA, 1.2 FIP. I think he's going to hold it the rest of the year. I know the reports say they took it away from Feliz for now, but I think Knebel could run away with it if he continues to pitch the way he does. And then coming in yesterday, it came up real late when we were kind of prepping for it, but Edwin Diaz removed from the closer's role with the Mariners. A lot of people are kind of wondering sort of why they did it. I know he's pitching great. We kind of mentioned that he could be pitching in high leverage situations rather than just the ninth inning. But he's got a 5.28 ERA. He's walking a shit ton of guys. What do you got on the Mariners bullpen situation?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because coming out of the WBC, Edwin Diaz was like the next great thing. He's wild. He had a chip on his shoulder. He's just stuff that was nasty. Going to be this great closer. And he's been bad. His strikeouts are there. He's striking out almost 12 per 9, but he's walking almost 6 per 9. That's not going to cut it. ERA of 5.28, FIP 5.96. Bad stuff when it comes to your closer. These are things you don't want. Where was I looking? Yeah. His soft contact's 37 point. He's got 30% of hard contact, which not good because he's given up way too many base runners to go with those. Sierra is showing some potential regression to a 3.83, but with the FIP, the xFIP, the kid, I think his biggest problem is between the ears. Bring on Steve Cishek. Just came off the DL recently, ex-closer in the bigs. He's had, 25 saves with the Mariners last year. At the Marlins, he was a big closer in 13 and 14. On yesterday in his first appearance, and blows the save by giving up a 2-run homer to Matt Joyce. Wow, Mayor. So right now it's the Steve Cishek show. You have Cishek. You have Diaz. I wouldn't be surprised if Diaz gets a shot again. His stuff is filthy. They're going to keep looking his direction. But as a team, they're drowning in closing options, and I'm trying to get their freaking they didn't pull up. But, yeah, outside of to like in that bullpen, in my opinion, maybe you know somebody different. But for now, yeah. I think Diaz gets it back, though.
Yeah, they mentioned Nick Vincent and Tony Zeich. I'm gonna guess they mentioned them, but they're nothing to write home about. They don't strike enough guys out. They don't get enough ground balls there. Yeah, I think it's Cishek for a little while, and then eventually they just have to give it back to Diaz. He just has too much talent.
Yep. All right, let's get into a little fantasy baseball talk, which is going to be a nice little change of pace for the podcast. We're going to do a little overachievers, underachievers, guys that might regress, guys that might improve, or hot starts to the season. We'll kick it off with potential regression candidates with Ryan Zimmerman. We mentioned him in our April, Player of the Month review, All-Stars, all that good stuff, because the guy has been outstanding. 382 average coming into tonight, 397, Wobo at 498, 13 homers, 28 RBIs, striking out less than 20% of the time, not walking much. BABIP before 402. We talked about him last week. He's hitting over 400, so maybe it's already starting. I don't know. But I'm going to throw it to you. Are we looking at a massive regression, some regression, no regression? What are we looking at with Ryan Zimmerman?
Yeah, I think it's if we're going to say he's going to bat around, 285, which is sort of his average, maybe not in the last couple years. I mean, he batted 280 in a short season, 275 in 2013. But the last 2 years he's been 249 and 218. And he's batting 385 now. We're going to talk about a massive regression. It's 100 points. His ISO is not going to be around 400, so that's why I took the under last week, I believe, with home runs. And then the BABIP is going to get down to around 3 probably. So I think it's probably a massive regression. Now, whether the homers continue and he gets to 30, that would be one thing. And, maybe in a rotisserie league, you can kind of get away with, if you can trade him now, you got a lot out of him. Head to head, it's going to be a little bit dicey, but I think I see a massive regression, and there's also the injury history. So, he's not a young guy anymore. There's going to be a massive regression there to get down to 285 for his batting average, and maybe he can continue the power, but I just don't see it for a full season for him unless they give him some breaks here and there. To your area, to Oakland, Yonder Alonso, the once promising prospect of the Cincinnati Reds, back in 2010, 2011. Guy's having a monster year. He's kind of quieted a little bit, but, he's batting 276. He's walking a bunch, 378. He's got 12 homers, 29 RBIs, which is, by far his most in a season in the majors. And it actually ties him not ties him in the minors, but in terms of, back in 2011, 2010. What do you think about Yonder Alonso? Can he stay healthy? Can he keep that job? I mean, there's really no one behind him that's going to take it.
There's a couple of interesting things when it comes to Yonder Alonso, besides, the rapid home run pace, but that's been well documented with launch angle and all this stuff he's been working on. But average-wise, he's hitting 276. He's been able to hit 270 plus most of his career. His BABIP's only 274. So honestly, I could see his average going up a little more, but then again, you're going to have a lower BABIP when you're trying to elevate the ball more and hit fly balls. So maybe not. The part I don't see the home runs going crazy. I could see him maxing out at say 25. I know that's only 13 more this year, but he's going to slow down and hit a slump. That's just going to happen. The biggest thing with Alonso to me is the A's are going to trade him. And that makes it interesting because does he go somewhere where he's going to play full-time? Does he go somewhere it's a favorable environment? It should be a contender, which, you start looking at contenders. Most of them have pretty favorable environments, you'd think, but not all. That's my biggest concern with Alonso is, even if he's having a great year and gets traded, what if he becomes a platoon player now? Which is crazy to think of because he's still pretty young for the most part. I think fantasy-wise, I'd have him on your team in a heartbeat. Even if he only hits 25 homers, 13 more this year, his average will be there. He'll be driving in runs. Still very, very productive, at least corner infielder. But to go bananas and go 30-plus, I'd be surprised. Out of the question, no. But my biggest thing is where will he be come, August and September? That's what I think will impact his fantasy the most to me. Heading to the pitchers, one that has been just is Jason Vargas. His changeup has been outstanding this year, just crazy good. But he's putting up numbers that most just don't expect when you're talking Jason Vargas. An ERA of 1.01. He's starting tonight, so this is prior to his start at home against the Yankees. But a 1.01 ERA. His FIP's 2.18 and his xFIP's 3.75. Bad. Striking out almost 8 per 9. He has looked very, very good in almost 45 innings pitched. What are your thoughts on Jason Vargas?
I'm going to surprise a lot of people here. I mean, I know his ERA is probably not going to be under 2 by the end of the year, so obviously he's going to regress. Not to the point where him to have like a, I'll Ross him in DFS against like Tampa at home, and then he'll have like an 8 earned run, like he'll have an 8 earned run game. I'm just waiting for it. But people do talk about that changeup. I think it really is a lot. He's throwing his fastball a lot more than he has in the last couple of years. I know it's short sample size, but I think he's locating that fastball really well. It's the changeup is obviously setting up that fastball, but I think he's locating it. He's keeping it down in the zone. So I like Jason Vargas a lot. One thing to watch out for, and you mentioned it with Yonder Alonso, is he's in a pitching ballpark. Who goes and gets him at the deadline? Because we all know the Royals are going to be trading people. He's going to be number 1 on the list, probably, behind Moose and Hosmer and Kane and Escobar. They're all going to be traded, but people need starting pitching. Okay, what can they get for Vargas? I'm not sure it's a lot, probably, but I like him. I like him a lot in terms of keeping in between that FIP and xFIP. Maybe just below 3. I think he can keep it up. He's striking more guys out this year than he has in the past. When he was at the Mariners, he was striking out around 5.5 to 6 per 9, and he was walking, almost 2.5. Now he's striking out almost 8 per 9. He's walking only 1.5, not allowing any homers. His BABIP isn't really terrible. The left on base will probably come down a bit. But I like Jason Vargas. I think obviously all these guys we mentioned are going to regress a little bit, but I don't think he's going to regress too bad that it's going to kill you in fantasy. To the Orioles, this is a guy that I've talked about, Dylan Bundy. He's having a nice year for the Orioles. He's 5-1, 6.29 Ks per 9. He's got a 2.26 ERA, 3.40 FIP, and a 4.46 xFIP. I mentioned about the innings limit. When will that kick in? Will they skip him in the rotation? Do they even have the luxury to skip them in the rotation? What do you think about Dylan Bundy?
Dylan Bundy is like that ultimate what's going to happen, because there's going to be regression from the ERA. I get it. His BABIP's only 253. It's not going to be that great forever, but it's not going to be a ton. Like, I could see him around a 3.32 ERA at the most. His stuff's been great. A couple things that concern me besides the BABIP, he's striking out barely over 6 per 9. With a guy with stuff like his past, he had an 8.5, 10, 13. Like, he had nice K per 9s. You saw stuff that just popped when it came with Dylan Bundy. You're not really seeing that this year. That concerns me a bit. It's just really tough. The other part is innings pitched, almost 52. How many innings? That's been a debate we've had a couple times on this podcast. What are they going to give him? Because the most he's pitched was last year was 109 2/3, and he's still, he's at least a year plus back from his injury. But what are they going to stretch him out to? That's a big question mark for me. Regardless, I still think he's going to be good. He's the ace of that staff right now because Kevin Gausman's been a massive disappointment. Somehow, as we both joke about, the Orioles are doing it with smoke and mirrors yet again, and he's a major factor why. He's been outstanding. But I see a couple blow-ups coming eventually. I just don't know when, because he's just – every time I think he's going to, he continues to stifle guys and just limits the damage. There's soft contact. If you believe in barrel percentage and everything, they're not hitting him very hard at all. So that's a big plus if you're not going to strike guys out, obviously, common sense. But when it comes to Dylan Bundy, I just see a regression train coming, but like not full steam ahead, if that makes sense. Just back to kind of a good number 2 or a 1B like we talked about before the season, like a good pitcher. I just think he's pitching a little higher than I thought he'd be at this point in time. But I think if you have him, I'd trade him, try to get the most out of him now. That's just my opinion. I could be differing from what you're thinking, but the biggest thing is I think they're going to shut him down around 130-ish. I think you said like 150. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there.
Yeah, I think the only reason I said 150 is because, they're in the race, and he's not throwing as many pitches per se. They're kind of limiting him there. But I think, we'll talk about another guy later, but that rotation is tough. I saw a tweet today that Edwin Jackson is pitching in AAA for them. So that would be pretty funny to see Edwin Jackson in Camden Yards.
Yeah, like Gausman's off to a mess. We'll talk about him later. Tillman came back. Tillman's actually been okay this first couple starts, but Tillman, you know what to expect from him. Miley finally got blown up. That luxury ride is going to be coming to an end. So we're going to see where they're at here pretty soon with him, with the whole situation. Moving on to a guy that's just been outstanding. I even picked him up in fantasy leagues, and then you broke the news that he's on the DL now. Surprise, surprise, another player I have on the disabled list. Trevor Cahill has resurrected things. He has been amazing for the Padres this year, and many thought it was, a home thing only. He's definitely pitched much better at Petco than on the road, but overall still a 3.27 ERA. And the part that's crazy is everyone screams, it's probably Petco, this, that, and the other. His FIP's 2.88, which is below his ERA, and his xFIP's 3.05, both below his ERA. So he's actually pitching really, really well. His K per 9 is 11.1. A problem is his walks are 3.7 per 9. Watching his games lately and doing a little more digging into him, because I just couldn't buy into it, and I had to research it before I added him in fantasy. It's his pitches and his movement on his pitches. That's the big thing. What are you seeing with Trevor Cahill, and what do you think is going to happen with Trevor Cahill?
Oh, regression just because of injury. No, but before that news came out, I was kind of high on Trevor Cahill. Swing and strike rate is up to almost 14%. It's like 13.7. It's by far the highest in his career. The contact percentage is only like 68%, which anything below 70 is really, really good. You know, and like you said, with the FIP and XFIP, it's lower than his ERA. His ground ball rate is 60%. So he's had pretty decent defense. Even his walk rate, you know, is a bit down from last year. And his BABIP and left on base percentage it is like right where it sort of the league average. So I was kind of high on him. I picked him up in 2 leagues as well. Kind of sad to hear about a right elbow thing. You know, tough for him going from the bullpen the last couple years to right back to a starter. Again, I kind of compare him to Drew Pomeranz, and luckily he went on the DL, so AJ Preller can't fleece anybody, Dombrowski, on getting their top pitching prospect. So, yeah, it's a tough one for Trevor Cahill because I was, you know, pretty high on him. And when I mean pretty high, I'm not talking like top 20. I'm talking, you know, he was nothing coming into the season. And now you get to pick him off, you know, free agency, and maybe you can go ahead and trade, you know, a better pitcher to gain, you know, if you're in a rotisserie, if you need saves, if you need homers, you know, head-to-head kind of same thing. You need a bat, you know, you can go ahead and trade a different guy. You know, I was like trying to trade Lester because he's a little bit older, and my staff was deep, so I was trying to get rid of Lester for a bat to kind of improve my offense, and then hope that Cahill, based off his peripherals, can keep it up. But that injury really kills it.
Yeah, one more thing before we move on to the next one is, like you mentioned, the contact rate and with the strikeouts and all that good stuff. And a lot of it is, I never realized it. Maybe it's when he went to the bullpen a couple for the last few years and he redeveloped himself or something. But his slider has crazy movement on it. His fastball cuts and sinks. And it was so Hedges needs to figure it out behind the plate or something. I wasn't watching it live his last start against the White Sox, but another reason why his walks are so high, I think he had 4 or 5 wild pitches in 1 inning. He had so much movement. You watch the game cast where the ball was when guys would swing. A lot of the stuff's not even in the strike zone. So he's doing something, and maybe that's why his right elbow's a mess now. So who knows?
Yeah. I was going to say maybe Hedges with the pitch framing, but you know, I get into so many stats here. I'm not going to bore everyone with the framing. Maybe someday, if it really gets into the point where you know, people talk about it. I don't think they talk about that as much, but yeah, that's an interesting thought. This guy I'm very interested in, Mike Leake. He's had a tremendous start to the season for the Cardinals. You know, 1.94 ERA. I'm just going to turn it over to you because I'm sure I know what you think about it. You're probably the same as me. Massive regression, sort of regression, or, you know, where's he going to level off there?
And Mike Leake is, you know, he had a very bad 2016, as many expected. He's been an average pitcher. Like when he got his contract, everyone thought, what the heck are the Cardinals doing? He's been a career, you know, 3.5 to 4.5 ERA type guy. This year, that 1.94 ERA is just nuts. But you look at that FIP and XFIP, a 3.14, 3.65. He doesn't strike anybody out, barely over 6 Ks per 9. He's walking almost 2 per 9, but he's limiting hard contact so far. BABIP at 237. So between the BABIP, the FIP, and the XFIP, screaming regression. You play in St. Louis, people know when it gets hot in the Midwest, especially St. Louis, that ball starts to fly. So I'm not saying he's going to be disastrous, but he's going to get back to where he usually is with a high 3, low 4 ERA. I'm not kidding. I think he's going to drop dramatically. I might just be overlooking these things, but I would get rid of him as quick as you can to whoever needs a pitcher, because you got great numbers out of him, and he is going to destroy real quickly, in my opinion. I could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong many times in life, but this one just screams trouble.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm surprised that his FIP is even that low, to be honest with you. I figured it'd be around 4 like it has been the last couple of years, but he's really waiting for that kind of couple blow-ups that we're going to see. And just want to mention that the Braves and Freddie Freeman are a beast, but that's just neither here nor there. On to our bounce back candidates. We got a few of them for you guys. This guy, I got him in one league. I was hoping he was going to have a good start to the year because I was going to trade him. Carlos Gonzalez, he's been awful, really awful. I mean, only 2 homers and cores. You see the walk rate is up, strikeout rate's about the same, average around 214, and his ISO is all the way down to 107. Did Bubba bounce back, or you think the summer in Colorado at Coors Field will help him out here?
Wow. Coors Field will definitely help. The Rockies need to be kicking the crap out of themselves right now for not trading him when they could have. Even if it was for like 80 cents on the dollar, they'd still be money ahead right now. We've mentioned it before with Dahl and all the outfield options they have. There's no reason to still have him on your team. And now you're not going to be able to trade him for much because he's injured now. He looked injured even when he was struggling. Sometimes you just get old. And he's going to be this bad. In Coors Field, you're never going to be this bad. But on the road, I don't see a good fit for him. If you look back to 2014, he hit 238 with 11 homers, 35 runs scored, 38 RBIs in 70 games. I could see something similar to that. Maybe he plays 80 or 90 games because he's already at 35 now. But really, realistically, I think that's what you're looking at. You're not looking at that big, 30-plus home run guy, not even close. He's got 2 homers right now, like you said. If he gets to – I'd say he might get to 15 just because of Coors Field, but I don't even think he gets there. I really don't. I think he's like the Adrian Gonzalez to me. He's not on the list, so I can bring him up. He's another guy. There's certain guys that just need to know when to call it quits, and I think Cargo is one of them. I could be wrong. What do you think?
I mean, to say he's not going to get to 15 homers in the next 4.5 months, wow.
He just looks so bad up there.
I know he does. Bad. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm so sad in my keeper league because I was like ready to deal him in the off season. I just couldn't get a deal done that I liked. I know he's 34 years old. I could look it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure that's what he is. Yeah, that's crazy to think about that the Rockies.
He's only 31 years and 7 months.
Oh, really?
Younger than me.
Jesus Christ. Just a bit older than me.
Yeah.
Wow. I thought for sure he was 34, but maybe I missed that boat. Yeah, I still think he gets to 20. That would have been a nice over-under last week. Maybe if we do that again, we'll include him. But I still think he gets to 20. It's still Coors Field. I think his BABIP is, it's not too low, but it's going to get up there. I mean, he's averaged the last 3 years. Last year was 346, but in his 40 home run year 2 years ago, it was 284. So it is going to go up a little bit. I think he's got to get up to at least 260, 270. I like him to get to 20 homers. I'm not sure what I would give up to get him, and I'm just going to have to ride it in my keeper league with him.
Pretty much. Moving on to another old-timer. He's actually over 34 years old, so I can feel a little better saying old-timer when it comes to baseball times. E5 was what I love to call him. Many don't realize where that came from anymore, which really makes me sad because it makes me feel old. But Edwin Encarnacion is off to a dreadful start with his new club hitting 207 with a Wojin. His ISO's 148, which is not great, but it's better than I thought it would be just thinking about him. But it's not great by any means. He's striking out over almost 28% of the time, 6 homers, 14 RBIs. Basically, it's almost like he's going to homer or do nothing. It's Edwin, but you never know. What are your thoughts on E5?
Yeah, that strikeout rate, it really, really, really scares me. And he's fly ball rate is low. I still think, it's he's comfortable in Toronto, plays in a dome for the most part. Cleveland, it's been kind of cold. So I still think he does get back, but that strikeout rate really, really scares me. And the OBP is still there because he's walking a shit ton. I still think he gets there. I still think he gets to around 25 homers. I don't think he gets to the 100 RBI. I think you're looking at, 2014, he had 34 homers and 98 RBIs. I think he's going to get not to the 34 homer point, but, as it gets warmer, I think you'll see him middle of June, through the summer, really be streaky and get hot a little bit. But that K rate really scares me. But everything else is still there. His hard hit rate is up. The BABIP too, it's around where it's been the last 4 years. So that's a really tough thing because he's really a power guy. That ISO's got to get up. I think as it gets warmer, I think he'll get there. In terms of buying low, really tough because, like I said, the thing that jumps out is his BABIP is where it's normally been, and he's striking out way too much. So in terms of buying low, really tough to do. I personally probably wouldn't, but I own him in one of my money leagues. I'm just going to have to ride it out with him. But unless you can get him for, I would trade Thames for him because I think he probably outperforms Thames the rest of the season, and maybe even Zimmerman. That's one of those, maybe those two guys you trade for him, and hopefully he gets hot in the warmer weather. Now to his old teammate, Joey Bats, up in Toronto. Whew, this guy, last year he was hurt for most of the year, 234 average. This year he's just not hitting. 5 homers, 18 RBIs. He's been a little bit better as of late. Got a 193 average, still walking a ton, so his OBP is around a 320, but that strikeout rate is up. What do you think about Joey Bats?
Like you said, he started to hit here the last few weeks, which obviously is a promising sign. He looks so lost, just like these last two guys we talked to. He looks so lost at the plate. The strikeout rate is very concerning. For a power hitter, he still usually is below 20%. If you look at his career numbers, he's usually wavering between, 15, 16, 17%, which is outstanding in my opinion. That 28% is brutal. The ISO's bad. BABIP isn't horrible for a fly ball guy. He's going to be better. He's never been a huge average guy. Like last year, 234, usually around 240 to 250. So I could see him creeping up to the 230 area, maybe a little higher than that. Like an Adam Dunn type year. I could see 20. I could see him getting up to the 25 home run level. Just playing in Toronto, when he gets hot, we've seen Joey get hot and streak. I don't think he's hurt. I don't think it's anything like that. I think he is a good guy to go try to get. Toronto's actually playing pretty well of late. If Tulo comes back, that'll help. Just little things along those levels. I think Joey Bats will definitely improve. Say 230 to 240 of 25 homers, drive you in 75 plus ribbies. I might be overshooting things here, but I could see Joey Bats putting together a nice little run the rest of the way here.
I think it's a great point with Joey Bats, where right now he's sort of the only guy in the lineup. No Donaldson, no Tulowitzki. They really need those two back to sort of get him back, because I think he'll see more pitches as Donaldson gets back, because he's the most dangerous hitter on that team. And I don't think it's close, especially with Bautista's age. And also, I know there's options on his deal. It's only a 1-year deal. So he's still playing for, another contract in quotes. Bad radio there, but he needs to hit if he wants to get paid again. I was surprised that they even gave him that much. I wouldn't have if I was Toronto, but I guess it's, hey, thanks for the last 4 years, and we'll give you that money.
Yeah, it was kind of a thanks, and it was actually a deal compared to what he was asking for. So everyone wins in that situation. Pitchers, we kind of mentioned him earlier. We talked about his teammate Dylan Bundy. We're talking Kevin Gossman, who both of us were pretty high on coming into the season, and he was pretty high on everywhere he listened to. He has been dreadful. 7.19 ERA, his FIPS 5.40, his xFIPS 5.29. Given it's pretty hard to get those numbers up to the 7.19 level. He's been bad, really, really bad. Striking out less than 7 per 9, which you don't expect from him. He's walking over 4.5 per 9. A lot of things that scream, oh no. There's been talks of possibly sending him back to the minors for some, clear the head. Gausman.
Yeah, for now, unless I can look in and find something there, yeah, I'm out on Gausman. I'm trying to decide whether to really just cut bait right now. Like you said, his strikeout rate is way down. His walks are up. Home runs are around the same. It's like a 1.52 per 9, but he's been awful. I don't think there's that much to say. I'm gonna go as far, unless you're in like a really, really deep league, where you can keep them. If you're in if a 10-team league, definitely can cut bait. 12-team, I think you'd be safe to cut bait there too. I mean, it's not really a hot take on my part. I mean, just his stuff really isn't there. Like I said, I got to look into him a little bit more to try to find something, because he was the guy for them, and somehow the Orioles are surviving. He was the guy, and Bundy's kind of taken over of that. Not ace, but number one. With Tillman, and I would cut bait with him. I wouldn't even worry about him.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm sitting these days. And like I said, I was really high on the kid, and he's just basically cuttable now.
Yeah, it's really, really sad. Even though hey, I'm a Red Sox fan, so what do you I'd like to see him pitch well in terms of fantasy, but he's on the Orioles, so not a bad thing for me right there. The next guy on the list, the AL Beast, Masahiro Tanaka. Rough start to the season, still really hasn't leveled off here. 5.80 ERA, 5.36 FIP. He has won 5 games, gotten some run support with Aaron Judge and the rest of the crew. What do you got on Tanaka?
It was weird because he had a couple starts there where it looked like he was really starting to figure it out, and then he gets blown up over the weekend, just destroyed by the Astros, and really took another step back, in my opinion. His strikeouts are down a little bit, but they've dropped every year since he's come into the bigs. His walks are up. His home run rate's the one that really gets me. Last year is below 1 per 9, or basically 1 per 9, 0.99. This year he's given up 2 home runs per 9, a BABIP of 312, which is very high for him. Eventually, I get going in my head is way back when there was talks of, hey, should he have Tommy John surgery? And he rehabbed through it, and he's powered through it. Well, his arm is still messed up, people. Like, eventually something's going to just stop working there, in my opinion. Maybe that's what it is right now. Velocity seems to be down a bit. When your velocity is down, like we talked about with guys like Greinke, you need to locate, and Greinke's locating this year. Tanaka's not. He's, like I say, he's walking guys, not striking them out, giving up a lot of loud contact. The barrel percentage is through the roof. I want to say he's going to regress. He can't be this bad, I don't think, unless the injury is real. That's the thing that keeps poking in my mind, is that elbow is a mess. If he's healthy and they're not lying to us, well, then I see him getting better. I could see low 4, high 3 ERA. The run support's always going to be there. If you're just looking for wins, there you go. But you can't really predict wins. Strikeouts, you're not going to get much. But he's usually good for a nice ERA and a nice whip for your fantasy numbers. I see him getting better. I just don't know how much based on his health.
Yeah, that's the key, is the health. I think he's going to get better too. I mean, you look at his game log. His first start, 8 earned runs in an inning and a third against Houston. And his last start, 2 2/3, 7 earned runs. But those 4 starts before, the one in Tampa, well, actually, it flipped that. Houston was his last start, and Tampa was his first start. After his first start, he had almost 4 quality starts. One of them, he went 5 innings. But he was kind of there. I mean, if he throws 7 innings of 4-run ball, even though it's not ace level, not number 1 level, it might be good enough for those Yankees bats, as long as they, continue to give them the run support that they've been giving all of their starters this year. So I'm going to buy him. I'm going to try to buy him, not, for some guys. I don't know who I'll try to buy him for, but I think he's got some potential to really improve a little bit here.
I completely agree. We'll head to the bullpen arm here, and right now Giles is closing for the Astros, the red hot Houston Astros, almost giving them the NL or AL West when you listen to TV shows. But Luke Gregerson was a guy that he's closing the pass for them. Many thought he might, have a shot to close. At worst, be a really good setup man. 6.89 ERA, 5.96 WHIP or FIP. Good thing is his xFIP's 3.98, so they're predicting some positive feedback there. But he just hasn't really had it. He's walking a lot of guys. He's given up tons of home runs. What is your opinion on Gregerson? Is he worth stashing somewhere, or what is going on with him?
It's a weird one. It really is. He's not really, in the past, he's been below like a 0.78 homers per nine. He's up to 2.87 homers per nine. Yeah, it's been Mr. Consistent. Ever since he came up in 2009. I mean, his highest ERA was 3.35, and that was in his first year in the bigs. Last year was 3.28. Still very, very good. He saved 15 games. While Giles was having a little bit of trouble. Yeah, I wait on Gregerson in terms of like a dynasty holds league, but you got to think he's been passed in that bullpen. You really do. I mean, Giles and Davinsky, they've really been great. I mean, I'm not hanging on to him for any saves. I don't think he takes that over. So if it's a saves league, you're dropping him. But if it's a deep, solds league, I think maybe you wait it out a little bit. But one thing that's really different now is the last 2 years, and even if you include, the 2014 Athletics, he's been around a 53 to 60% ground ball rate. And this year he's 33%. So that's really alarming. He's just not getting the ball on the ground, and they're really hitting him hard. So yeah,
that's what's leading. And that's leading to that home run to fly ball is about 25% compared to the 13s and 2.87 homers per nine. Yeah, something's definitely not right there.
Yeah, he's leaving the ball up probably. I'm sure if you look at his his pitch FX, I'm sure he's leaving the ball up way too much. I mean, it doesn't take Captain Obvious to really put that out there. That's the alarming one. So I cut bait with him there. Like I said, real deep leagues that have solds or holds. Maybe you can wait a month and see if he kind of rights the ship a little bit, because he does have good stuff. He's been Mr. Consistent for the past 7-8 years. So that's what I got on Gregerson. Last one that we have is K-Rod. Man, this guy was amazing. Coming up in that World Series year for the Angels, but this year looks like Ausmus already took the closers role away from him, gave it to Justin Wilson. He's got an 8.16 ERA, 6.80 FIP. It's been awful. I mean, 3.14 homers per nine. He does have 7 saves, but he has 5 losses. His walks are way up. What do you got on Francisco Rodriguez?
The fly ball percentage is almost 24%. His velocity's down. He's 35 years old. Last night he came in an extra innings, gave the bomb to Chris Davis to lose the game. Basically, his first 2 batters, a walk home run ball game. He's a mess. I want nothing to do with him. I know they said they're going to try to give him the job back because they're going to want to trade him or something. He needs to go. He has no business being on your roster in any fantasy league whatsoever. His stuff is horrible right now. If he somehow finds it, more power to him. But he's worse than Fernando Rodney right now, and that's saying a lot. He is dreadful. It is ugly to watch. It seems like he has no idea where his pitch is going. When he thinks he knows where it's going, it's usually like a batting practice fastball. So the little bit I've watched live, it's just disgusting, and his stats show it. I'm not even going to talk long-winded about this. I want nothing to do with Francisco Rodriguez. It might get worse than 8.16, and that's hard to do.
It's really sad that they couldn't build a bullpen there and not predict that this was going to happen, because his velocity was going down a little bit the last couple of years. and his ERA was kind of climbing, 3.24 last year, not too bad, still at 44 saves. But if they could have predicted that and had a nice bullpen and gotten traded him in the offseason, what a steal that would have been for them. But unfortunately, they decided to keep everyone and try to go for it. And, I'm sure we'll get into the Tigers down the road, as we get closer to the trade deadline. That's something to watch out for. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you can cut him from fantasy. I wouldn't be surprised if he's cut from the Tigers as well eventually.
Yeah, because you're not going to send him down to the minors. So where are you going to put him to figure it out? You're not going to keep throwing him out there, and unless you just keep him around for when you're getting blown out in the 8th inning, you can say, okay, go see what you got, kid. You don't do that with a 35-year-old right now. So he's wasting the roster spots of Jimenez. They keep sending back and forth. Or if you want to see if someone can figure it out, you bring up Rondon, the kid at one point you thought would be your closer. Let him go make mistakes. Don't let K-Rod do it. So it'll be really interesting to see how that all unfolds. But, yeah, 35 years old. He's had a hell of a career, 427 career saves. But I think it's time to call it a day.
Agreed.
All right. Well, that'll wrap us up. A little fantasy baseball talk, prospects, Jeter, everything under the sun. Anything else, Mo?
Hey, Boston Celtics, hell of a couple days, not to get away from baseball. Hell of a couple days. Only one game in the series.
What do you think of that douchebag Darren Ravel's tweet?
Yeah, the sad thing is probably when he tweeted it, he probably was just like, hey, I'm just doing my, $500K a year ESPN business thing, because I looked at it and I said, what a dickhead. But then I kind of went and said, but it is factual. So that's his job. And if that tweet goes off and we respond to it, he did his job.
Yep, that's what he does. He knows people hate him, so what's the point of hiding it anymore? But yeah, really good stuff for your Celtics. Should be interesting against LeBron and company. But, yeah. Well, that'll do it. Episode 12 is in the books. We'll be back next week. If you guys have anything you want us to talk about, hit us up on the Twitter handle @AroundBasesPod. You can hit Mo up at Boston_Mo. I am at BDintric. As always, thanks for listening, and we will catch you guys next time. Out here.
See ya.